Hello, little bakers. Today, we're gonna need brown sugar, some puff pastry sheets, some unsalted butter, only 1 egg, powdered sugar, all-purpose flour, green apples. We need about 3, 4, maybe 5, depends on how many you're making. Green apples, heavy whipping cream, and cinnamon. All right, first you gotta peel your apples. So it should look like something like this when you are done. Leave it off the side and keep going. So once they're peeled, you're gonna need to core them. And so we got this little fancy tool that cores it for us and chops it into pieces, which we're gonna need in the next step. But just go right through. Sometimes you gotta get high up. Ugh. Yeah, there we go. Take the core out, just like that.
Our next step is to take those pieces that she just cored, and I'm gonna take one off, and I'm gonna put it into this little gadget. I've got all kinds of fun little gadgets in my house. So this one is a little chopper thingy. So I'm gonna put that whole piece there. I'm gonna push down, and it's gonna send it right through to the other side. And you wanna get your pieces cut about this size. I'm gonna do the rest of the apple. Okay, so we finished chopping them all. If you look into the container, I've got these little apple squares. The first set that I was doing, I found that they were a little bit long. So I cut those apple pieces in half and then did them again. And they got really small like this. For the recipe we're using, we actually only ended up using 2 apples to do this. The apples we had were quite large, I guess. So this is about the amount of apples that you want. On a side note, if you don't have a little silly looking chopper like this one, you can definitely cut these apples by hand. Just make sure that when you're done, you have cute little cubies like this.
Now in a medium-sized pot, we're gonna melt 1 tablespoon of the unsalted butter. Put that in there. And once the butter is melted, just like it is, we're gonna add our apples that we chopped. There we go. And stir. Right here. Yeah. Oh, made a mess. You know what? I always make a mess. It's fine. You make a mess, just make sure you clean it up. So we're just gonna stir occasionally until all the apples are nice and soft. For about 5 minutes. Don't forget to preheat your oven to 400. Boom. All right. Once your apples are soft, you're gonna take your brown sugar. We need 1/4 cup of brown sugar, lightly packed. Okay, we're gonna put that in there with the apples. You'll need a 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon, but this is just to taste, so if you want more or you want less, depending how much you like cinnamon, you can. And then an ingredient I forgot to say in the beginning, but we need some salt, but just like a dash of salt. Done. And then give it a good stir. Be careful not to drop more apples. All right, so I've been stirring this for like 3 minutes, and now it's turned a nice little caramel color, what we call caramelized. So what you're gonna do once that happens is turn off the stove, and then you're just gonna set it to the side and let it cool a little bit while we go work on the puff pastry part of the thing.
Okay, so the next step is taking that puff pastry. Make sure you get it to room temperature before you start to do any of this, because if you try to roll it while it's still frozen, it's gonna get stuck to your rolling pin. So I'm gonna take this. What's really cool about puff pastry is it's already cut kind of for you, so you can see where you need to cut. I'm gonna take my fancy pastry cutter thingy, and I'm just gonna cut along those same lines so that I cut this into 3 separate sections. Once it's cut, I'm gonna move 2 of them out of the way, because we're gonna work with just 1 at a time. I'm gonna put a little bit of flour on my board to keep it from sticking to the board. So just dust the board a little bit with flour. I kind of spread it around there to let it go. And then I'm gonna roll this out just I mean, not quite double this size. I want it to be a little bit wider than it is. So I'm gonna roll that out now. Okay, so now it's about double the width that it was. And I'm just gonna take this, I'm gonna kind of eyeball it and cut it right down the middle. So I have 2 equal pieces. And these are gonna be the 2 pieces that we put together once we put the filling inside. Okay, I have already cut these in half. I'm gonna take my apples. I'm just gonna fill the middle of this pastry with a good amount. You don't want to overdo it because then they won't seal well. But you want to put it kind of right in the middle of your pastry, as close to the middle as you can. I try to get it a little bit long, kind of like a shape of a football. And then I'm going to take my little, whatever this little brush is called, pastry brush. And I made what's called an egg wash. So this is just a tiny bit of water and 1 egg mixed together. And all we're gonna do is we're gonna put it on the edges of our puff pastry. And this is gonna help seal the puff pastry top to the bottom. I'll just make sure that goes all the way around, just like that. And then I'm gonna take the top one, put it right on it. Should be about the same size. It's a little bit off in size, but it's pretty close. And then I'm gonna take my fork, and once I make sure all that filling is in the middle, make sure that gets all put in there good. I'm gonna take my fork, and I'm just gonna crimp around the edge all the way around, just to make sure that it is completely 100% sealed. Don't push too hard because you don't want it to get stuck to your board. And then we're gonna move this onto a parchment paper lined baking dish. And we're gonna do that with the rest of our puff pastry until they're all full. Okay, so now you can see all of our streusel, toaster things are closed. So I'm gonna take that same egg wash that I used to seal them, and I'm gonna put a coat of egg wash on the top of each one. All this does is it helps give a really pretty golden brown color when it's done baking. So I put a little bit of egg wash on every single one. And then I take a little bit of table sugar. This is just regular sugar. This you do not have to do. I like doing it on puff pastry because puff pastry to me is kind of bland, but it's not required. And I just put a dusting of sugar right on top of each one. All of our turnover toaster strudel pastry thingies are egg washed and sugared. And I'm just going back and putting tiny little slits in the top, and this is just to let them vent while they're in the oven so that they don't like blow up huge. It lets the air out of them as they bake. These are gonna go into that preheated 400-degree oven for about 20 to 23 minutes until they puff up and they're a golden brown color. See you in a little bit.
Set a timer for 22 minutes.
Sure, 22 minutes. Starting now.
This is what they should look like when they come out of the oven. Then we're gonna set them aside to cool while we make the icing glaze.
Okay, so I'm gonna take about half of a cup of powdered sugar, and to that I'm gonna add between 1 and 2 tablespoons of heavy whipping cream. This you just kind of do a little bit at a time. I would suggest doing maybe 1 first and then stirring it around. I don't believe in dirtying things if I don't have to. I mean, technically it's a spoon, right? So we're gonna stir this around, see if it's the right texture, and if it's not, or the right consistency rather, and if it's not, then I'll add a little bit more whipping cream until it's the way I want it to be, and we'll see how it comes out. All right, so we ended up adding 2 full tablespoons of the heavy whipping cream, and that's about the consistency that you want for your glaze. I'm gonna put this into this cute little bottle, one of my kiddos got for me for Teacher Appreciation Week, which is super cool because they know how much we like to bake. And we're gonna fill this bottle up with this glaze, and then we're gonna drizzle it on top of our strudel pastry.
Lastly, decorate how you want. I'm gonna make a big R for Rodriguez. Ooh, I like a lot of icing. Oh, ooh, ooh. Shake it down. All right, time to eat.
Delicioso.